If you guys enjoyed this video, remember to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. With that being said, hello everyone, welcome back to another figure review. My name is Matthew, and today we're back with another, figure review. Today we're taking a look at, continue our NECA marathon of reviews. We're going to be taking a look at the NECA 1989 Godzilla, the standard release, not the Biollante Bioattack, as we'll talk about in the other video. But that said, this figure, it's very interesting because this is one of the last Godzilla figures that NECA had put out while they still had the license, and was one of two last sculpts, this and the 2003 Godzilla. So, and then after that we had the Biollante Bioattack and the Hyper Maser Blast variant, of which the latter I still need to get. That said, this figure is definitely going to be an interesting one to talk about, because I had previously stated that this one was my favorite of the bunch, because in my NECA rankings videos, this guy was pretty much like the definitive NECA Godzilla. While I still do stand by that, we're going to be taking a more critical look at this thing and really kind of putting the nail into it. So is it as good as I say it was, or is it just okay at best? Let's find out. So for the sculpt and paint, now for the first time in true high definition, I can safely say that the head sculpt on this thing, while it looks great from some angles, it definitely looks a bit off from other angles, which is kind of a common theme of NECA's classic line of Godzillas. Not trying to shame NECA at all, hell no. What I am saying is that NECA has a very, depending on the sculptor and the designers, just a very mixed result. I mean, that original 84 prototype from almost 10 years ago is definitely not what they would do now. But that said, for the head sculpt here, it looks really good, at least head on. The detail work on things like the nose and the facial structure just look really nice, and it has a very, very nice aesthetic to it. It's a lot less glossy than the earlier NECA figures, but you can definitely still see like it has some really nice wash and really nice detail to kind of bring out the finer, details, and it just looks really nice. Something that I do have a bit of a problem with is going to be the eyes, and I mean, it's kind of minor, but this eye is kind of looking this way, and this eye is looking more straight ahead. And I didn't really notice this until now. So it definitely looks off when you have it like from the front, just because of the way it's painted. But aside from that, that looks pretty much fine. The actual, let's get a more closer look at the side. The side is definitely where it kind of has a bit of issues, because I definitely feel like the head is a bit too pointed upward. But that said, it still looks pretty nice regardless. We have a kind of like a red outline for the eyeball, and then white for the eye itself, along with some brown and black. So NECA really did their homework when it comes to the eye. Taking a look at the mouth inside, this looks incredible. The double row teeth are sculpted and painted really well, with the top gums looking really nice, where it goes into the peg hole for the atomic breath piece. And of course we have the little tongue in there, which they kind of did the similar thing with the 62 Godzilla, minus the paint, where it's actually on the hinge, which that I do really like. Taking a look at this other eye, we can see kind of more has the same thing, although I will say the paint application is a bit more tidied up on this side compared to this side, because the outline is a bit on the lower side, while this one pretty much has it about to a science. For the dorsal plates here at the back, 3 rows of them, can't go wrong. Has like a ton of detail here. Not much paint aside from like a dry brush or wash. A little fuzz. I have cats, so do expect to see a lot of fuzz here. But we do have, again, a lot of nice dry brush and like the waved detail, more like roughed up on the neck, and then kind of smoothens down with the line work. And that's something I do like about NECA. Here's a bottom shot of the jaw here, just in case if you're interested. But yeah, that pretty much wraps up about the head. So going down to the shoulders, we have quite a bit to talk about here. The shoulders in question have that paint, which are going to be primarily on this side and in the middle, while the black kind of like base color, or that's probably a wash, one of the two, is kind of like seeping through the crevices here and almost look like the new trying to think like two in what's the name of the I don't, you guys probably have no idea what I'm talking about, but anyway, looks like two eyes together. There you go. Letter eyes. I should probably clarify. So that looks neat. And we do have some more like the detail kind of coming down here. A little bit of a black splotch, which I do find a little weird. But we do have some like more folds in the skin, which look more like the suit than anything else. For the claws, they are just kind of basically painted. A very nice paint of like that very goldish brown, but it definitely doesn't look the best when it comes to like the shading, because there really isn't any shading. They kind of just slapped it on there, but it does do its job. Come back to the chest, we have more like the scaly detail, and it does look pretty good. Coming to this arm as well, as you can see with this claw. The claws are almost painted all the way. Not completely, but you can definitely see what I'm talking about. Here for the thighs, which are going to be very big. And so let's just briefly showcase this part. The crotch itself. Anyway, the thighs here do look really nice. And I do like the kind of like black highlights here, because it very much captures all the folds in the skin. And it's clear that NECA understood where it was and how to highlight it. That's something I really do like. You can see all the scales that go down with the figure look practically immaculate, I will say. As for the kneecaps, they do look pretty nice. Standard oval shape. Can't believe I'm actually calling a kneecap nice. Hey, like your kneecap. Anyway, moving down to the shin area. Shin Godzilla. Waiting for that 4K release. It's coming this August, so I might cover that in a different video. Anyway, black highlights going down from the kneecaps to the actual shin cap areas, where we do get more like that black spray. And then we obviously have that hinge, which isn't as like noticeable. Well, it's noticeable, but it kind of matches color-wise, although I do get a bit of paint access there. Yeah. But we do have some more like the folds here, which are highlighted in black, as well as here as well. You can see all the scaling. And of course, the big chunky feet, which are going to be pretty roughed up, dirty looking. This actually has a bit of like subtle gradations for the base color to the actual claw itself. And it looks pretty, again, roughed up. Here at the bottom of the feet, not too much detail. We do get a bit of it, but it's not really by much. We have like copyright information from NECA and such. Toho Company Limited. Peg holes at the bottom of the feet. I find it interesting how it has one peg hole here, but peg hole back here. Interesting. Also, I never really pointed it out, but there is a bit of excess paint there, but because it's at the bottom of the feet, that's a bit minor. But now let's talk about these dorsal plates. This is beautiful. Let me get a good look. There you go. Beautiful. I'm just gonna say, no complaints with the dorsal plates here. The dorsal plates are really well painted, and I love what we have here. The frosted white tips to the gray base. All the shapes look amazing, and even the more smaller ones do have a bit of paint variety. It's so cool how NECA did their dorsal plates, and I really wish we had more of this, because they were sadly cut early. Regardless of who's at fault, if it was themselves or Toho's, this should have been, what we had more of. But anyways, actually getting a more better look. It looks very well done with all the puffy dorsal plates. Mine are, I don't know if it's actually meant to be like this, but they are a bit warped. Well, some of them are. But you do get a bit of like folded with them because they are made of like a more rubbery material, but it's not like flimsy rubber. It's actually quite durable rubber, although do keep in mind that they are still prone to paint chippage. And as we go down, we still get the dorsal plates, and let's just talk about the tail. The tail is one of the longer NECA Godzilla tails, and it's just so cool. It's meant to look like an S, which does kind of come in a bit of a price when it comes to articulation, as we'll discuss later. But this tail just looks awesome. Not only is it individually segmented, not like articulation-wise, but we do have like the black highlights really working their magic, like individually like segmenting the whole body. But we do get an amazing amount of like the more rough texture versus the more soft and smoothed out texture at the bottom. And then at the top you have all the dorsal plates, which are painted towards the very end. A little bit messy, but again, that's the tip of the tail, to be expected. It just looks so good. And this is really what made me like the NECA 89 so much, was that it was the most well done out of all the Godzilla figures they had released, because it was the most consistent. And that's honestly what I have to commend NECA for. It's that it had consistency. So really, for sculpt and paint, though it's not necessarily the most accurate, I would say that as far as the actual execution goes, this is probably the best executed of, I'm going to say it, the entire line. It's really well sculpted and really well detailed. I almost feel like I'd be paying this as a $50 to $60 figure, but in reality it's only like a $25 figure, at least was. But still, it's incredible to think that for a $25 budget, NECA was able to put this much effort into their Godzilla 89. And again, it kind of bums me out that NECA never continued or was able to continue it. I think they are still able to continue it, they're just choosing not to. But still, this thing is incredible. So for sculpt and paint, I think I'm going to give it, well, actually, let's go back. Is there a bit of cons? Well, I definitely think the claws could have been done a little bit better, and that left eye could have been done a little bit better. But that aside, those are basically nitpicks. But you know what? I feel like a 9.5 out of 10 for the sculpt and paint is practically perfect for this thing. So almost near perfect. So 9.5 out of 10 for sculpt and paint. Now for articulation. Hinge at the jaw, as you saw earlier. We can go open about that far, shut about that far. Ball joint here at the head, so we can look down, look up. We can lean from there to there, and we can go a full 360 degrees. For the neck piece, not the head piece, we can look down about this far, look up about this far. So you can actually, using the two joints, you can actually get him to look a little up because his eyes do angle like that. To the left, about this far, right about this far, and can rotate, I believe, a full 360 degrees. There you go. For the arms, which we're going to angle down the camera a bit. There you go. They're on swivel hinges as opposed to them being ball joints. So you can see there's a hinge, so you can go up about, try to push it that far, down about that far. And I think for a rotation, can go all the way around. Okay. I did not remember it actually being able to go all the way around. I was always thought that it would be very limited. For the actual elbow, we can straighten out, go back in because it's on the swivel hinge, and we can go all the way around just like that. For the swivel wrist, we can go hinge as well. Mine's a bit stuck. It's a bit stuck sometimes, but we can go in about that far and bend out about that far. Can rotate a full 360 degrees. And for the finger claws, can go out and in. And because of the way the thumb's positioned, you can't really look like he's gripping, but you can kind of look like he's gripping stuff. So there's that. Set the arm back into position here. There we go. Now the waist. We can go. I'm trying to make him go as forward as he can. About that far forward. About that far back. Can rotate a full 360 degrees. Although again, do keep in mind that the dorsal plates will chip against each other if you rub them too much. So just kind of align everything back into place. The legs, we can go out to the side, in, and can rotate not a full 360, but it's pretty close, at least comfortably. You could probably force one, but like I don't want to force it myself. So they are on that barbell style ball joint, so just keep in mind things can get out of line. Hinge for the knee, so we can go bent in, straighten out. A mild rotation, although my knees don't really want to do anything. Ball joints here for the feet, so you can go full 360 degrees, plus pivot and go forward and back. And now for the tail. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 ball joints here for the tail. So this is kind of where I would mention the S curve. Pointed up, it looks great. Pointed down, not so much. Because if you were trying to get it all the way down like this, or straighten it out, this is basically what you get. And even then, if you were trying to like cover all the gaps, it's still kind of raised on the ground. So it's sculpted to be in this position. It's kind of like what they did for the Shin Godzilla, where it's meant to be like, and then mainly that stance. So if you try straightening that tail out, it's just going to look like complete crap. This, it's not as crappy as that, but definitely kind of leans a bit more to that. But you can still actually rotate the tail pretty nicely off to the sides without it looking super terrible. Trying to get into like a funky pose for y'all. But yeah, that aside, that should be relatively about it. Also, I would like to state that in my original reviews, I had falsely addressed that this thing was a bendy wire. Nope, it is entirely solid plastic. The 2003 variant was a bendy wire. This part was not. So I would like to apologize for that. That said, this is definitely going to be a more, how you say, very expressive Godzilla. Although it's a bit mixed as far as the range is considered. It has new engineering, like the swivel hinges for the wrist, and a fully ball jointed tail as opposed to it being a hybrid tail. But at the same time, you can't really use those joints all too much, especially the tail. You can get it out to the side a bit more, but straightened down and leaning up. It's meant to be in one specific pose. And I feel like when you give an articulated figure a pre-posed fixed position, then that kind of ruins the whole like point of the articulation. Like at that point, you might as well have just had the whole tail as a solid S curve and just pegged it right into the butt. That said, the articulation for what you do get is really good, and in some parts very expressive, like the head, and I would even say the waist a bit, because it is a bit more freed up. The arms, decently expressive. Legs, maybe not so much. So in terms of articulation, it's fairly standard for a NECA Goji, just not the most articulated as far as the range is considered. And you can't really use stuff like the tail nor the legs. So with that said, I'm going to have to give the articulation a, what's an honest rating? 7.5 I feel like is fair. Very good, but not great. What's a Godzilla figure without some firepower? The SH Monster Arts Godzilla 1989 Spitfire version, which was an exclusive. Yeah, so basically this is a base form Godzilla that might not look like it comes with anything, but actually NECA was kind enough to package an atomic breath piece. I could have the wrong one just because this and the Spitfire the Biollante Bioattack Godzillas have the exact same beam effect. So I do apologize if this is the one from the Biollante Bioattack, just because I have them both side by side on the shelf. But as you can see, it looks very, very reminiscent of the NECA V2 beam from King of the Monsters, but it is an entirely different sculpt. For the base of the beam, we have this white tip, which eventually kind of tapers off into like a spiral, and then it looks more like water, to be honest, but it has a lot of blue hues, like a lighter blue, a bit of darker blue in there, and some white highlights as well. And it has a very nice, beautiful spiral in there. Mine's got a bit of blue paint, like right there, but it just looks so good. And it honestly almost in some ways look like toothpaste. What's actually pretty cool is that this is actually a bit more of a harder plastic, so it won't sag, which, thank you, NECA. I guess this is their way of like addressing the sagging problem. But yeah, to peg it in, you're going to see this big, long peg with a teeth at the bottom, like some teeth grooves. That is going to be the bottom jaw. And how you insert it in is you're going to see a very long insert hole into there. Insert it like this, and then shove it in, and then boom. You're pretty much golden, glory. You're going to see, obviously, the bottom jaw. If you want it shut or it being more secured, put it in like this, although it does kind of weigh down the jaw, but it does kind of fit in there, not too badly. But yeah, there you go. So crap. So there you go. He's shooting the beam. So in my personal opinion, this beam looks a lot better than it does with the 62. Like as far as like it looking up, even though he's kind of doing that, he's looking straight forward and then shooting the beam downward, which is kind of what the Heisei Godzilla did, because he looked at his enemy. In this case, it's Biollante. So let's say pretend this hand is Biollante. He's looking at her, and he's shooting downward, because that's kind of what the Heisei Godzilla did. So in the movie context, this does make sense. But that said, could the beam have been done better? Maybe. I'm really trying to struggle, like, what's so bad about the beam? There's really nothing bad about it. I will say it does feel a bit brittle, because like one good drop on the floor and this thing could be broken. Although this beam has dropped on the floor on me a few times over the years, and it hasn't really broken on me. So you know what? Maybe I'm wrong about that complaint. So I'm going to say beam. It's not like overblowing, like, oh my god, this beam is so cool. It's a serviceable beam effect that does its job and does its job well. There's just really not much else to it. And it's not, I'm trying to properly think how to rate this. I guess the only thing I would have really done is maybe give it a more, I guess, blue color scheme. Because while it does have blue, I feel like it could have used a bit more of the darker blues, and that's really like nitpicking. So I'm going to say 9 out of 10 for the beam. And so for size comparisons, here he is with some other Heisei Godzillas that NECA released throughout the years, with their 1989 Biollante Bioattack and the NECA 1994 Godzilla from Godzilla vs. Space Godzilla. And like I made mention with the Biollante Bioattack, it's definitely going to be the same base figure. And actually, let's bring in this 1994 comparison. This is a very damaged 94 figure. You can actually see all like this gunk and white stuff on him. That is glue. Head popped off, and this thing has been through a lot of wear and tear over the years. So I do plan on skipping the review of this guy until I find a better 1994, which could happen soon. I don't know. Depends on a lot of different factors. Money, availability, etc. I have options, so there's that. But just to kind of like showcase the sculpt, this was their second ever sculpt for Godzilla. This was their second last. Really goes to show how much they've improved. Like, look at the dorsal plates, for example. Awesome. And also, just for the whoop-de-doo-gee of it, here's the tail length. Such a skinny, puny tail compared to this. Am I right? So, there's that. To also say. Also, if you're wondering, the beam effect does not work with the 94 sculpts. I've already tried on Burning G and Reactor Glow. It doesn't work. And just because I mentioned the beam, here the beam is compared to the 2019 Godzilla. So it definitely looks similar. It's not the same. It's very much a different mold because the King of the Monsters or Legendary Godzilla at large had a more plasma-like beam compared to the more Dragon Ball laser beam of the 89 Godzilla, even though the 89 Godzilla technically predates Dragon Ball. Because Dragon Ball, I think, was 90s? Anyway. So before I kind of get my overall thoughts of the figure, I would also like to state that I am planning to buy a Biollante, not like the Monster Arts Biollante, the one that I would have to pay a whole kidney for, but an actual, like, probably a smaller scale Biollante, the Bandai vinyl, probably a bootleg of it, but still, some form of Biollante to go with this guy. It's not going to be in scale, but it's going to be a Biollante rep. I just want an official, well, not an official, but a figure of Biollante herself. But that said, what are my overall thoughts on this guy? I think that the 1989 Godzilla is a home run. I still think it's that good. I think that the sculpt and paint is beautiful. The articulation is serviceable and does what it's supposed to do and does it pretty well. The accessory is pretty damn sweet. And overall, for what was a package for like, what, $25? You could have went way wrong with this. I am honestly so happy I own this thing. And it's so cool that NECA actually bothered to take the time to make another Heisei after the 94. But, or I guess 84, because the 84 technically released after the 94, whatever. Do I recommend him in 2025? If you can find this guy for, I would say, under $50, go right ahead. It is an absolute snag of a deal. I've seen a few pop up for resale where I am from time to time. But that said, your mileage will vary on this guy as far as your standard for 89 Godzillas. I mean, NECA Toys just came out with their 91. And big asterisk here, the 89 and 91 are close to or about the same design, so you could actually disguise this as a 91 and that is an 89, so maybe you want it there. Anyway, as for my final rating of the NECA 89, I'm going to go with a 9 out of 10 for this figure. It is really great, and I'm really happy I own him, even after all these years. So with that said, thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed it, leave a like and subscribe to the channel, and I will see you guys in the next video. Peace out, everyone.